How does Oregon handle Jacob Rodriguez? How does Texas Tech handle Kenyon Sadiq? The pass rush of Texas Tech against the Oregon offensive line. All the matchups that define the Orange Bowl are right here on this show today. On a crossover edition of Locked On Ducks and Locked On Big 12. Look, it's Drake. He's over there. I'm not a weatherman.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for a crossover edition of Locked On Ducks. I'm Spencer McLaughlin and Locked On Big 12. He is Drake Toll, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, the number one sports podcast network out there. Thank you all so much for helping make that the case. Will Drake really pick Oregon to lose by like 30 points, as he mentioned in a video earlier? That shall all be discussed on today's show, which is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. They've got Oregon minus 2.5 now over at FanDuel. Drake, do you find that to be ridiculous, insane? I don't. I think this point spread should be under a field goal going either way. But before you get to that, what's the most important matchup in this game to you?
Yeah, I think it's going to be the trenches, specifically Texas Tech's defensive line. Look, you can open any podcast, any radio show in the country, and if they're telling you something different, I think they're missing the main point. You can go into the in-depth, man, Oregon's run game is super strong. When you flip it around, Texas Tech's run game, two-headed monster, also super strong. Oregon, great quarterback, first-round draft pick. Texas Tech, a quarterback that when you run the ball 3 yards, 4 yards, 6 yards, 2 yards, Baron Morton then takes the top off. Like, there are so many things to analyze, but if you're going to break this game down, you have to start with the Texas Tech defensive line versus the Oregon offensive line. Because the Tech D-line is the strongest position group that's going to play in this game, are they the difference to win it for Texas Tech? I won't go there yet. I won't get there yet, but I will say from a spread standpoint, I'm going to go ahead and agree with Las Vegas. I think based on betting trends, based on how Vegas does this, Oregon should be a 2.5-point favorite. Oregon should be a 2-point favorite, a 3-point favorite. Reason being, a lot of times what you're going to get with
Guess you're taking Texas Tech and the points then.
I cannot wait for the Texas Tech money line to hit my bank account
yes.
on Thursday. And I will certainly explain why I think that's going to happen in a professional way and give you actual real takes. No grifting today. I'm going to break this one down with you. And what I want to be clear about, though, is there is a difference between Oregon football and Texas Tech football in the way it rolls off the tongue. When you tell most of America Oregon football is in the playoff, they're like, yeah, of course they are. Oregon has that brand. They've had that brand for multiple head coaches now for the better part of 2 decades at the top of this sport. For Texas Tech, you say, oh, yeah, Texas Tech's in the playoff. A majority of people, they still hear that and they think, man, that offense is really good, but the defense, who knows? They're stuck in the 2016 Big 12. They're stuck in the Patrick Mahomes era of Texas Tech because the casual college football fan is not watching Big 12 football or the Texas Tech Red Raiders. That's the way that it goes right now. It's the way that the TV networks want to pitch it is, hey, look, we've got Ohio State playing Oregon. That's why the Big Ten has Ohio State and Oregon. So I think a lot of the country's missing what Texas Tech's really good at, and it's the defensive line. If you're paying attention, you know that. If you're the casual viewer and you're introducing yourself for the first time to Texas Tech, get ready to understand the Big 12 has flipped. This Tech defense is much better than its offense.
Yeah, you're not telling me that piece of information for the first time. I've seen a lot of the Texas Tech defensive line. They are very good. PFF has them graded number 1 in the country, as a matter of fact. And Drake, do you know which offensive line, according to PFF, is graded number 1 in the country in pass protection?
Could it be the Oregon Ducks?
It is indeed the Oregon Ducks. This is the most quintessential best on best I think you could come up with in a playoff game. Frankly, I think it's the most quintessential best on best matchup in all of the quarterfinal games that we're going to watch, starting on Wednesday night with Ohio State and Miami, because I don't think there have been 2 units that have been more exceptional than these two. Oregon was a finalist for the Joe Moore Award. There are plenty who feel that they should have won it over Iowa, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend to know everything that goes into voting for the Joe Moore Award. If offensive production is a part of it, well, I know which offense is better between Oregon and Iowa. I mean, the bar is the floor for the most part there, but Iowa's offensive line, very, very good. Indiana's offensive line was very, very good. I think you could have made a case for the Hoosiers, but Oregon deserved to be one of those final three units. And one of the other matchups, aside from that, which I do think is number one, I agree with you on that front, is how they're able to run the football. Coming into this year, I talked all offseason on my show about how I wanted to see Oregon get back to being a more explosive team running the football, because it's something they didn't do very well last year. And then that came to a head in the Rose Bowl against Ohio State when they really struggled running the football. They also lost Jordan James, their starting running back, in the first half of that game. But this Oregon offensive line, run blocking, has been exceptional. And they've got a trio of running backs. I know Texas Tech probably would, if Quentin Joyner hadn't gotten hurt before the season, probably would have had a three-headed backfield similar to what Oregon has. But I think the second matchup that I'm really intrigued to see, how does Oregon schematically attack the Texas Tech front running the football? And how do they try and confuse, if you can at all, a guy like Jacob Rodriguez, who's as good of a defensive player as there is, maybe the best in all of college football this year? Because their three running backs, they get the ball in different ways. They use them in different ways. They have a lot of different formations and looks that they want to attack a defense with. I don't know that Texas Tech has seen a team that does that. Now, their front seven is as good as any in college football. I just don't know. Maybe Kansas State, they don't have the depth of running backs that Oregon does. But Oregon runs the ball really well, and I think a lot of people hear that and go, oh, yeah, so their offensive line can move guys around. Yeah, that's definitely a part of it. But the number of different formations and looks and schemes that they use, I think that matchup within the matchup is going to be a huge factor in this game.
Yeah, no doubt. And Kansas State may be the most comparable team that Texas Tech has played offensively to Oregon. It's weird that you say that, and I don't want fans to hear that and go, well, Kansas State sucks. I'm saying that in that Kansas State's a Midwest version of Oregon. They're not near as good as the Ducks, but they're going to give you some interesting run scheme. They're going to give you Garrett Oakley in the passing game. They're going to find the big tight end somewhere across the field who's dynamic and try to make plays with him. And when Texas Tech played Oregon, and this is where I fear for the Red Raiders. This is where Oregon fans can say, uh-oh, we can exploit that. That's where Avery Johnson, he came out and ran the ball super well. Kansas State was able to open the game up by utilizing their quarterback in the run game. They tried to get fancy with Jace Brown. They found Garrett Oakley, 5 receptions, 62 yards, had a touchdown in this game. If Oregon's going to do that, then that's where Texas Tech has to step up and start to really scheme defensively. The bad news for Oregon is you're trying to confuse Romello Height. You're trying to confuse David Bailey. You're trying to confuse Jacob Rodriguez, some of the best defenders in all of college football. I would say there's only one D-line that compares right now in the sport to Texas Tech, and it is Miami. They've got a couple NFL draft picks on their D-line as well. But if you do get through the front line, you're immediately left with Ben Roberts and Jacob Rodriguez that are staring you down, ready to jump right on top of you. Texas Tech is just loaded at each facet of the game defensively.
I wouldn't overlook Oregon's defensive line in that discussion. They have 4 guys that are going to get drafted. It's just a matter of when and where.
Sure, we can put them in the conversation for sure.
Yeah, they're definitely up there. But the quarterback pressure conversation is another matchup that you got to watch for in this game. We'll talk about that when we get back on this crossover edition of Locked On Ducks and Locked On Big 12. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Fridays already feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel is making them even better. Every Friday night, before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. And of course, this game we're talking about can be wagered upon over at FanDuel. Oregon minus 2.5. Look, if you think Oregon is going to do Texas Tech what Ohio State did to Oregon in the Rose Bowl, circa January 1st, 2025, then you probably think Oregon minus 2.5 is the side to be on. If you are very confident that the Big 12 will not end the season with 0 playoff wins, if you don't count earning a bye, of course, then you probably think Texas Tech plus 2.5. Maybe you want to go Texas Tech money line. That's clearly what Drake wants to do. Whatever you're feeling for this playoff game or any others, FanDuel's got you covered in a big way. And as I mentioned earlier, they've got the NBA as well. Before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour, only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Drake, I've heard a lot of chatter this week, and I kind of get a kick out of it, frankly, because there's been this talking point that I've heard reiterated on a bunch of shows. Well, this quarterback struggles under pressure. Man, Baron Morton against the blitz, man, he's bad. Dante Moore, he was only pressured once against JMU, and he threw an interception. Boy, he struggled against Indiana when he got sacked 6 times. I am desperately seeking, especially in college football, the quarterback who's just lights out when he's being sacked 6 times in a game. I don't know who he is. I don't know what team he plays for. I'd love for him to play for Oregon one day. Now, I moved past that sarcastic point that I needed to make to begin this segment to say the team that pressures the other quarterback more probably going to win the game. Now, Dante Moore is healthier than Baron Morton. He is mobile and a situationally solid runner.
Well, would you say that now that Baron Morton had 5 weeks off where he got to do the ice bath, the foam, the pressure, the whatever he wants, the acupuncture?
Yeah, I mean, I just think as a general rule, Baron Morton is never at 100%.
Well, that's probably fair. And I do agree that the pressure is going to be a big piece of this game. Baron Morton and Dante Moore have both had games where they were sacked 4 times and won by double digits. Dante Moore against Wisconsin, Baron Morton against BYU. BYU is much better than Wisconsin. We know that. But
Dante Moore actually didn't finish the Wisconsin game this year.
We've seen still sacked 4 times. 4 times. Maybe his was 3.
I'll pull it up.
Thank you. We have seen both these quarterbacks under pressure go down multiple times and win the game. So while it seems like the obvious take that the team that pressures more will get the win, I think you're dealing with 2 quarterbacks who have felt pressure this season, yet have still succeeded in that. I could see that there's a world where Dante Moore sacked 5 times and Baron Morton is sacked 4 times and Dante Moore wins the game. Vice versa. Baron Morton sacked 5 times, Dante Moore 3 times, and Texas Tech still wins the game. I think pressure might not be the ultimate key to who wins the contest.
I think sacks are not the ultimate key. I think pressure is the ultimate key. Because what both of these quarterbacks are capable of doing, Wisconsin did have 4 sacks in that game. I frankly would have to go back and look at every single play to figure out how many were on Dante Moore and how many were on Brock Thomas. Man, I don't have that stat loaded. I haven't done any preparation for this show. I'm just winging it. I think that the pressure is important because both of these teams are among the most explosive offenses in all of college football. And yes, Oregon can do that on the ground, and yes, Texas Tech can do that on the ground. But they both have quarterbacks that can push the ball down the field. And unless there is a hurricane that shows up on Thursday, and I don't think that's in the forecast in Miami this time of year, they should have the ability, unlike in that Wisconsin game that Dante Moore got knocked out of that was in a monsoon, they should have the ability to, just physically speaking with the ball, to throw it down the field. I mean, they might not have that in the Rose Bowl, by the way. It might have a bunch of rain in Indiana and Alabama that affects that game. But these 2 offenses both have got the quarterbacks and have got the receivers to push the ball down the field. Oregon's got DeCorian Moore and Gary Bryant back. They both played a little bit against JMU. They will not have Evan Stewart. He's listed as out for this game, and that would have been a nice bonus. I don't think it is a critical blow to Oregon's offense with the way they've played the last month without any of those 3 guys, and now they have 2 of them back. So I think the pressure rate and the ability to have the time to take those downfield shots is what's more important than how many times you just sack the guy. Not that sacks don't matter, but I think we could look back and say the team that's got a higher percentage pressure rate on the opposing quarterback ends up winning this game. And I think these teams do it in somewhat different ways because Texas Tech doesn't like to blitz very much.
The reason I'd push back a bit on this is because of what I gave you. I do think that quarterback sacked more times could still win the game. And if pressure isn't necessarily a sack quantified thing you're looking for in this game, Baron Morton has been under serious pressure, and Texas Tech has still won by relying on chunk plays in the ground game. I'll take you back to the game that BYU and Texas played the first time around, Texas Tech in Lubbock the first time around. And in 43 carries, BYU had gave up 150 rushing yards to Texas Tech. 75 of those yards came on 2 carries for the Red Raiders. The other 75 came on 41 carries. What they do is they break you down 4-yard run, 6-yard run, 7-yard pass. 4-yard run, 6-yard run, 32-yard pass from Baron Morton. They love to take the top off and move really quickly, and it's because of the dynamics of the offensive line. They're going to use tempo as kind of a shield. They want to get prepared before you can put in the intricate blitz, before you can communicate where you're going to stunt. There's a kind of a high velocity in the way that I would describe what the offensive line can do so that we can't let Oregon rotate. That's what Texas Tech's going to try to do to limit that pressure, knowing their O-line is not as good as the Oregon offensive line. Knowing the Texas Tech O-line is a good unit, not an elite unit, they are going to utilize the velocity to throw Oregon off the game. And I think the defensive ends of Oregon can have some serious success. My question mark is, if Baron Morton can keep a clean pocket, if you get the defensive ends wide enough, keep a clean pocket to step up in, does it give him time to get the ball out 25, 30 yards downfield and allow the Tech receivers, especially the X on the outside, to get underneath the football? If that's the case, namely on second down, that's where Texas Tech can gas you, is the chunk play. They need 4 big plays in a game and then 3 yards the rest of them. That's how they're going to win, and they dominate in that way.
Oregon has not given up a lot of chunk plays this year in the secondary. They have not gotten beat deep over the top very often. Even Fernando Mendoza in that Indiana game, which everybody loves to talk about, is, man, Indiana just absolutely clobbered Oregon, which isn't what happened, but that's okay. Fernando Mendoza, the Heisman Trophy winner against this Oregon secondary, 215 yards passing. DeMont Williams, who tore up a bunch of defenses this year to the tune of anywhere from 300 to 500 yards of total offense. He had under 160 total yards of offense, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He threw for 129 yards on 50% completion percentage. I think this Oregon secondary is really good. I think these Texas Tech wide receivers are solid. I don't think they're the best core that Oregon has seen this year. I think they're definitely in the top 4 or 5, but I'd take USC's receivers. I would take Indiana's receivers. Probably I think Washington's is close. I think they're closer to that. And I don't know that Oregon secondary is, unless they really, really struggle in a way that they just haven't this year, I have a pretty high level of confidence that they're going to be able to take away those chunk plays.
If the quote is Oregon is really good at not allowing chunk plays, why did James Madison have 9 plays of 20 or more yards?
Because they were playing a bunch of backups for almost all of the second half. They gave up 2 explosives in the first half that both led to field goals for JMU. One of them was on a double pass, and one of them was on a long run, in which I got to shout out Alonzo Barnett III here, threw a pretty awesome block. Now, Oregon's front 7 lost outside contained, but Brandon Finney was there, and then Barnett, the quarterback, went out and was laying it all on the line and just threw a great block, and I was like, oh, that was kind of cool. And then Wayne Knight broke a long run. Those 2 plays alone concerned me far more than anything that happened in the second half of a football game that was 34-6 at the break. And coaches can say, all they want about, man, we go in the half, we say it's 0-0. They knew. The game was 34-6. It was over. And I don't think that Oregon came out with the same level of intensity in the second half in that James Madison game as they have the rest of the season. I look far more at what they did at Penn State, what they did against Indiana even. Oregon's defense played great. It was the offense that really struggled in that game. And there I think there's a similarity for kind of general college football fans about these 2 teams. The historic brand that they've accumulated over the last 15 years of college football is they play a lot of offense. Now they're not so good on defense. I think both defenses have been more consistent for both teams throughout the course of this year. You think about the last Power 4 team that Oregon played in Washington on the road, good solid win. The offense played well, but the offense didn't play great. They won that game with defense and special teams. They held Washington to 14 points. They picked off DeMont Williams twice, including once in the end zone. And Atticus Sappington was the Big Ten Special Teams Player of the Week because Oregon kept moving the ball, but they didn't run it incredibly well, and they kept having to settle for field goals as a result. So I think that what both of these teams bring to the table defensively, I don't read too much into one game here or one game there. I look at the whole body of work, and I think I know what I'm getting on that side of the ball. The question is which offense can execute better and create those explosive plays against the opposing secondary. And I like Oregon's more than Texas Tech's.
Can I ask you on the James Madison front?
No, you're not allowed. I'm hosting the show. I forbid you.
I have wondered all week long. This is something we haven't seen. I've heard the talking heads nationally are like, well, last year the teams got a bye. They went 0-4. So all the teams got a bye are at a disadvantage.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
And then I talk to coaches, and a lot of them have the same perspective of, hey, I want the rest. I still want the rest. And on top of that, look at when Alabama plays Mercer in Game 11, or when South Carolina plays South Alabama in Game 11. Sometimes you'll see them come out in Game 12, and you're like, why in the world is Ole Miss so sluggish? Why in the world is A&M so slow here? Why is Arkansas so slow? And the question for me is you go gauntlet. And Oregon's final stretch of the season I thought was super impressive. Minnesota, blow them out. That's a bowl team. USC, you win by 15. Washington on the road, that's a pretty good bowl team. You just beat three good opponents. Then you
Iowa on the road. Don't forget Iowa on the road. Might have been
sure.
the toughest of any of those games.
No doubt. Yes, we'll go last four. Thank you. Yes. My question is, how do you go from tough sledding to 34-6? Oh, we got our proverbial Mercer. We got our proverbial South Alabama. And then we reset right back into mindset. Last year, it wasn't like that. The first round, you were going on the road against a Power 4 team, good Power 4 teams. This year, it's, we got to take the second half off, and then we didn't have a lot of fun in that second half. I struggle to see Oregon coming out hot against Texas Tech because of that.
I'm going to answer that question right after this break. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at Game Time. There's nothing like college football season. Tailgates, packed stadiums, being right in the middle of it all. The energy, the bands, the moments you remember forever, but actually getting tickets, that part used to be frustrating with long queues, logins, prices jumping at checkout. That's why Game Time gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to unlock amazing college football tickets and experiences in just a few taps. And if you want to go to this game or any other college football playoff game, Game Time's the way to go. I've used Game Time to go to college football games, to go to college basketball games, to go to comedy shows, and the experience has been great. I've saved money every time. Getting the ticket onto my phone is a super easy process. I know what I'm paying up front. I get a great deal. I know what I'm going to see from my seat when I get there. Game Time gives you everything you want. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. My answer to your question, Drake, is I'm glad that Oregon is in the playoff for the second straight year. This is only the second time that Dan Lanning, as a head coach, has made the college football playoff. He's played in plenty of big games over the course of his career in Eugene outside of that. But certainly having the long layoff last year and then the Rose Bowl going the way that it did, I think that staff learned a lot. And Dan Lanning has said as much, that they've changed some things. He's not going to dive into specifics because that's just not the way that he rolls. But I don't think it's infeasible to think that, hey, you go through that process and you learn, okay, here's what we did and that didn't work out. Here's what we should do instead. And we'll see if those adjustments really come to fruition. And, Tosh Lupoy, Oregon's defensive coordinator, said, hey, it was the best thing that could ever happen to us, which kind of make me put on my tinfoil hat for a moment, think, did you do it on purpose? Did you want to keep this team hungry and motivated and dry? I don't know. I don't know if that's actually the case. It just kind of got me wondering on that front. But I think Oregon, having been in this position, this exact spot in the college football playoff a year ago, and now having done the work and having won 12 games this season, including JMU, to get to this position again, I think there's a lot of value in that. And I think that's one of the biggest coaching challenges for Joey McGuire and the Red Raiders. Not a single one of those players has been in the playoff before. Not a single one of those coaches has been in the playoff before. It's different. It feels different. The way you talk to your team, the way you motivate them, the way you game plan, all this sort of stuff. Oregon's been through that experience, learned those lessons, and now they come here. And I think that's going to require an extra level of coaching, and I'd be all the more impressed with Texas Tech if they do win the game, which they absolutely can. I don't think that one team is blowing out the other here, but anyway, that's the answer. My answer to your question.
I struggle to subscribe to that. And this has nothing against you. I've seen it at bowl levels, or right. Hey, TCU's never been to the Rose Bowl before. Well, they beat Wisconsin. Boise State's never been to the Fiesta Bowl before. And I know it's not apples to apples. Obviously, it's not. This transitive property doesn't work in college football. But a lot of times when we talk about, are the lights too bright? Is the adjustment too much? But then when it's my pants go on the same way that yours do and the X's and O's, Jimmys and Joes hit the gridiron, I'm just not sure if we've been here before plays into it as much as who's the better team.
Yeah, I don't think that's a ridiculous take. I think this is the sort of matchup that will ultimately come down to one coaching staff versus the other. That's what Oregon had in the Rose Bowl last year. And I said at the time, continue to believe, they just got flat out coached. They weren't, suddenly lacking the ability to play with a team of that caliber because they beat that specific team earlier in the season. They just did not have the right game plan. They were not ready to go. They got off to a bad start, and they weren't able to make the adjustments quickly enough. And that comes down to the coaching staff. And I think this game comes down to the coaching staff. Do I think Oregon has more talent than Texas Tech? Yeah. Do I think the gap is so big that Oregon can roll out of bed, play a C-plus game, and go and win? Absolutely not. I think this will come down to which coach can scheme up better pressure, who's better in situational moments, who's able to have more success on third and fourth down. I think that is what this matchup shakes out to be. And I want to close with a couple of individual matchups here, one going each way for a couple of star players who are both going to be selected at some point in the NFL draft. Kenyon Sadiq against Jacob Rodriguez could be pure, absolute cinema because while Jamari Johnson has also played very well, especially over the last couple of games, Oregon's number 2 tight end, who will also probably be an NFL draft pick one day. Kenyon Sadiq is looking like a first rounder. Jacob Rodriguez is the best linebacker in college football. Is that the only guy you think Texas Tech can use to match up on Kenyon Sadiq? Because he's someone that will line up in the backfield as an H-back, on the end of the line as a tight end, in the slot, all the way out wide. Can literally play. They could snap him the ball. They did once earlier this year. Maybe that shows up in the red zone in this game for fun. But I think that matchup could be really, really fun to watch.
Yeah, I'm not going to push back on anything Kenyon Sadiq related in talking about how good he is. He's one of the most fun players in college football to watch. He's got this. Remember that Isaiah Likely Ravens game, his first game, rookie year, where you're like, that guy's legit. And it's not a one-to-one comparison, but when you watch him, it's just like that. Here's the savvy tight end that is a game changer in college football. I almost look more for guys like John Curry at the linebacker spot or Ben Roberts than I do Jacob Rodriguez when it comes to Sadiq. I don't think Texas Tech...
I got to cut you off for just a moment, just to point out to Oregon fans out there that this is not Ben Roberts, the former Oregon defensive lineman who has converted to play linebacker. This is a different Ben Roberts.
Also linebacker.
Well, Ben Roberts was an Oregon defensive lineman, and I don't even know where he transferred to, but
not Texas Tech.
No, not Texas Tech. Different one. I think only 10% of my Oregon audience is even going to remember him. And guess what? I'm still glad I pointed that out.
The streets remember, and that's all that matters.
Yes, that's exactly right. Exactly right.
I think you're going to see Curry and Ben Roberts spend a little bit more time than Jacob Rodriguez does. This is a crazy reference, but it's the best way I can describe Jacob Rodriguez and his ability to wreak havoc. Basketball. If you ever watch basketball when you play Pee Wee, there's the box and one. It means 4 guys are in a zone, and there's one defender, and the coach says, that's my best player. You're Andre Roberson. Just run around. You just kind of do whatever you want out there. Box and one. The other 4 guys are playing in a zone, and one guy gets...
I got box and one in 6th grade one time.
Yes. The best player is always the one that you guard with the one. It's a beautiful defense in Little League basketball.
It's not very fun to play against because I tell you what, our team didn't have a lot of scorers, especially ball handlers after me. This is 6th grade basketball, just to be clear. And it was good coaching from the other staff because we lost.
And that's where Texas Tech wins, is by they say, hey, Jacob Rodriguez, you're just that good. Let's just box and one. And it's not that literal. And Jacob Rodriguez, do whatever you want, but they're going to float him a ton. They don't have to send him on pressure a ton. They want him to be in the middle of the action. They don't need to blitz Jacob Rodriguez. They don't need him to garner 7 sacks in this game. They want him wreaking havoc 3 yards past the line of scrimmage, where he is at an elite level on nose to the football. I mean, the guy himself, 8 games into the season, had forced 7 fumbles, and he still sits at that number, but he's a walking turnover machine. Double-digit turnovers that he's forced overall this year from fumble recoveries, forced fumbles, and interceptions. Jacob Rodriguez is a monster. I don't think we'll see him as related to Sadiq in this game as maybe a typical scouting report linebacker versus tight end would say. Instead, I foresee Ben Roberts trying to step in front of Sadiq a ton and expect Texas Tech to get pretty creative with their linebacking core, especially as good as John Curry is, a guy who we don't talk about enough.
All right, it's prediction time.
Nice.
Do you want to go first or do you want to go second?
I'll go second.
Okay. Just want to give you the most recent information, of course. The over-under at FanDuel has been pretty high considering how really good these defenses have been all season long. And I do think Oregon wins. The over-under is 51.5. That's a little bit higher than I thought it would be. When you've got 2 great defenses that have had this much time to prepare, now the offenses I think could score early because you've got a couple of really good offensive coordinators that I think will put together a really good game script. But after that, there are a lot of NFL players on these 2 defenses. Oregon, all the guys up front. Texas Tech, just about all the guys up front. I think Texas Tech's got a better linebacking unit than Oregon. I think Oregon's got a better secondary than Texas Tech. I'll take Oregon in the under, 51.5, 24-20. I think the Ducks get it done.
Wow, you sounded so confident. Oh, my gosh, the energy boost.
Look, man,
really I'm scared now.
Look, I've just been in this spot too many times. You ever watch the new Spider-Man movies with Tom Holland and Zendaya?
I have a girlfriend, so no.
That was good. That was good. That was warranted. I'm also aggressively single. There's a quote in the most recent one, No Way Home, from a few years ago, which is a really good movie once you ignore the first third of it.
Apologies to all the Locked On Big 12 listeners right now, by the way.
That's too bad. That's too bad. She has a quote in there where she says, "If you expect disappointment, you'll never be disappointed." I love Oregon's team. I love the coaching staff. Dante Moore is great. They have played really good football this year. Their only loss is to the Big Ten champion in what was a close. They're really good. They got the tools to go make a run for the national championship, and I think they're going to win this game. But man, would it shock me if they lost? No, of course not, because I've been here so many times, man. So many times. We've waited for a long time as a fan base, and it's just to the point where I'm like, you know what? I really hope they get it done. I hope this is the year. But if it's not, I can't sit here and pretend to be shocked. But I do think Oregon wins 24-20, and they just covered the 2.5.
Cameron Dickey, really good running back. Jacoby Williams, 2-headed monster for Texas Tech. They're going to be tough to stop. I think each of these teams catch themselves kicking field goals. Both defenses very good in the red zone. Both offenses might stall out and need the legs of their kickers. I've got Texas Tech winning this one in a similar fashion to how Indiana dominated Oregon. It wasn't necessarily fancy, cool. And so when I say dominated, I don't mean blowout. I mean dominated in that Indiana.
Okay. I mean, those 2 words are synonyms, but all right.
No, for sure. But to expound just a tad, this is, and Coach Gary Patterson has broken it down a couple times. It was less of look at that stunt, look at that blitz. It was more Indiana's just got some dogs. Like that was, he's like, I watched the film multiple times. There were maybe 4 exotic blitzes, and the rest of it was just Indiana's got some dogs. And where I think Texas Tech succeeds in this game.
We have different takes on that game.
Another piece, you and Gary Patterson. Yeah, you guys hash that out. You guys hash that
That's
out.
fine. We'll hash it out on the next Amazon show, man. Like, I've watched that game. I've watched that game a lot.
You guys can go toe to toe. But I think Texas Tech on a game, it's 9 a.m. mental clock for Oregon. 11 a.m. for Texas Tech. Early game defenses hold here, and the under. I love the under, but I got Tech winning this one, 27-17. Texas Tech by 10.
A 10-point win. That would be.
Sound familiar to Oregon fans?
No. Last year they lost by 20.
They lost by 10 to Indiana.
10. That would be a 50% improvement.
Lost by 10 to Indiana, but that's whatever. Yes. Okay. Yes.
Yeah. No, they did lose. But yeah, that's true. They did lose by. Just really quick, I want to just note a couple of things. Number one, Indiana had guys running at the quarterback, and I think I could have had the chance to sack Dante Moore. They were so free. Bryant Haynes should win the Broyles Award for the best coordinator in all of college football, and he'll be a head coach in the sport in 2027. Number two, 1 to 10 confidence in Texas Tech's kicking game, because I'm not going to say out loud because then it might jinx something, but Atticus Sappington's been pretty good this year. But the Red Raiders kicking game, good, bad, indifferent.
Good, actually. Texas Tech had to rely on the field goals against BYU in their first matchup, 29-7. 5 field goals for Texas Tech in that game, so they're used to doing that.
Yeah, felt like Oregon. It felt like Oregon's win at Washington to wrap the regular season. He's Drake Toll, Locked On Big 12. I'm Spencer McLaughlin, Locked On Ducks. Appreciate everyone listening. We'll see you next time, and until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.
I played nice today.